I think these are two players who are trying to make up for something. And for Kylian Mbappé, he's trying to make up for the slow start that he had and really trying to prove to everyone else that, hey, this is the club that I wanted to be at since I was a child.
Atletico Madrid, they're looking at their season up to this point. They're saying, we've drawn Real Madrid twice now on the season, 1-1 the score on both occasions. Mike, when you look at how both teams are going to come away from this match, is it going to feel more like, for Real Madrid, a point gained or 2 points dropped?
2 points dropped. This was a match that I think for Madrid, given how they drop the ball in big matches. Look, if you're Carlo Ancelotti, to go down for a dubious VAR penalty call, which is never a penalty, which I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that. What leaves Carlo Ancelotti and what Madrid fans will be frustrated was some of the tactical decision-making, how Madrid set up in the first half. They played right into Atleti's hand. I mean, they showed up in a 4-4-2 against a team that drops 5, 6 players back at any given time defending. Atleti defended in a 5-4-1, and every single Madrid player was playing so narrow. And that's on the manager for setting his team up. And kudos to the stars of the likes of Vini, who was much better in the second half, the likes of Mbappé, who were much better, and Jude was very good for the 90 minutes. They really stepped up. But this is 2 points dropped when you look at the bigger landscape. And when we look at the weekend winners, there's
Barcelona.
A certain team in Catalonia
Barcelona,
that would be
for sure.
happy.
But for Atletico Madrid in this game, coming in, the big storyline, Nate, was all of the defensive injuries that Real Madrid is dealing with at the moment. Atletico Madrid's offense has been flying. So if it feels like 2 points dropped for Real Madrid, how's it going to feel for Atletico Madrid, given that this was the game that really felt like if you were going to get a win over Real Madrid, it was going to be in this match?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword when you go up against Real Madrid, because at the same time, if you decide, let's put some numbers forward and go after that beleaguered defense, you're exposing yourself to just an all-star side of attacking players.
That was your chance in the first half. You had 3, 4, 5 chances against the league leaders that you know Madrid's going to come back in the second half. You know it's a matter of time. And at the end of the day, Atleti will be the happier of the two sides. They don't have to play Madrid in domestic competition anymore. We'll see if that translates to Champions League football, though.
Nate, you touched on it. Barcelona. This result keeps them right up there in the mix, with no team able to really separate themselves by getting all 3. How much more interesting did the La Liga title race just get?
I think it's the best race in the big 5 leagues in Europe right now. I mean, when you look at it, because this is a 3-team race now.
Yeah.
And Barcelona have shown they can beat Real Madrid, right? And they actually have the attacking prowess to go at them and score goals. The thing about Atletico Madrid, once they got up 1-0 especially, it was all sitting back defensively. And I understand that's part of the way that they want to do business. For Barcelona, they've had injuries. They picked up another injury defensively yesterday as well. Araujo went down, so they're playing an 18-year-old at center back as well. I think you're still going to see some of that up and down with Barcelona through the course of the season. But they're in this race now, and they just sat back and watched these. That's what they wanted. Let's see those two split the points. We'll pick up 2, and all of a sudden it's race on, and it's a 3-team race for sure.
Speaking of up and downs, Lahoud, the partnership of Real Madrid's attack, which hasn't exactly come together in the way that everyone expected, but this game was a tale of 2 halves, and in the second half, we did see a much better performance from the likes of Jude, Mbappé, Vini Jr. How would you assess and grade those players on the night for Real Madrid?
Look, Jude Bellingham, and I hope Carlo Ancelotti, I know you're a big fan of morning footy, so this is a message for you. Carlo, stop playing this guy as a left midfielder. And when I talk about the 4-4-2 in the first half, he set his team up to not succeed. Jude Bellingham, when we look at the success that Kylian Mbappé and Jude Bellingham have had, it's with Jude playing centrally. And that was the big difference, Jude coming in centrally, rather than being asked to function as a center midfielder in attack, and then haul ass to get back and defend as a left-sided midfielder to make up ground for Vinicius Jr. that doesn't defend. But we cannot forget another player who was their standout performer, Rodrygo. I said last week that I still think that Rodrygo is an answer to a lot of solutions, and Vinicius Jr. will end up being the odd man out for this Madrid side. Vini Jr. is an exceptional player, and we look at all these chances being created. A lot of it was interplay and interchange between Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappé, and full credit for Vini for getting himself psychologically back in the match, because Nate, for the first 60 minutes of that match, he didn't look like he wanted any part of it.
The balance, I think, is a big question for this Real Madrid side. And Rodrygo on the right-hand side in this match, I mean, it was his action that led to the goal. You know, I mean, obviously the ball falls into the penalty area, and that's where the goal is scored. But it happens because of the action by Rodrygo coming up the right-hand side. And at one point watching the match, they showed a graphic I thought was interesting. The attacking actions from the left-hand side and the right-hand side were dead even. It didn't seem that way watching the game. Vini Jr. started to grow into it late. He had a couple of different runs where he took on defenders, got it all the way toward the byline, and then, you know, had obviously denied by Oblak on a couple of saves as well. But I think figuring out that balance for Real Madrid is still something that they're working on. And I'm curious if you think, it's been 14 games now, by the way, where Mbappé and Vini Jr. have started together in La Liga. And the numbers still say that Mbappé scores more when they don't start together. Do we make anything of this, or are we making too much of something like that?
Look, I think there's something in the water with that. There's something that you're pointing to, which I very much agree with. The balance goes very much off. These are two players that when you look at the 90 minutes, they don't look to play off each other. They all look to be the main man. And I think there's a power struggle going on between those two.
That was very evident in those clips right there. Mike, you've been on teams before where I'm sure you've seen a variety of situations with player relationships. Watching that, what does that tell you about where both of those players are at mentally right now?
I think these are two players who are trying to make up for something. And for Kylian Mbappé, he's trying to make up for the slow start that he had and really trying to prove to everyone else today, this is the club that I wanted to be at since I was a child. And Guillaume Balagué, I almost called Guillaume Balagué, Guillaume Mbappé. No, Guillaume Balagué said something when we were interviewing him last week that there was this sense of self-imposed pressure with Mbappé when he came to Madrid and all the humility. And I totally agree with that. With the likes of Vini Jr., he's still trying to make up for that chip on his shoulder that he has, that he feels aggrieved that he didn't win the Ballon d'Or. And he said, after losing that award, don't worry, I'm going to come back 100 times or 10 times stronger. Well, you're not coming back stronger, my guy. And I think that this sense of tunnel vision is actually taking away from the buy-in that the likes of Rodrygo's bought in, Kylian Mbappé is bought into what Carlo Ancelotti wants to do. Jude Bellingham is bought in. And there is this odd man out right now, and it shows in form and it shows in discipline in the form of Vini Jr.
At the same time, we're still talking about the team that's top of the table.
Yeah.
You know, and even last year, as they go win trophies, there's always seems to be problems with Real Madrid, and we wonder if this is going to be the problem that trips them up, and then they just keep winning. And so as much as we talk about those things, I've been making this analogy to when you saw the Golden State Warriors in the NBA have all these scorers, and, you know, KD joins a side that's already capable of winning a championship, and he found a way to fit into the mix. One day he maybe go for 30 points and the next day somebody else goes for 30. It doesn't mean he had a bad day that day. I do think we have a tendency sometimes when we look at Real Madrid and we want each one of these guys to score a hat trick every time they go out there, and it's not really a realistic thing to look at. Vini Jr. had some great plays down the stretch that, if not for Oblak making saves, we could be talking about him the hero of the game. I realize that's ifs and buts, but I just wonder a little bit if our expectations are so high, because we're talking about 3 different guys that are possible Ballon d'Or type players. And Rodrygo might be the most important of all of them, and we don't even mention him in the category because he's the opposite of Vini, right? He's quiet. He doesn't really. He's tranquil. He doesn't really create all the waves that Vini Jr. does. So I just wonder if we don't overblow some of these issues with Real Madrid a little bit.
A lot of mouths to feed. That is for
and
sure.
Only one ball.
And only one ball, and still a lot of season left. Perhaps the biggest test for Real Madrid is coming up this week in the Champions League knockout round playoffs. And who do they have to face? Manchester City, another team that has struggled equally as much. And we're just going to see over 2 legs who's able to come out on the other side. Going to be a lot of fun. Kicks off tomorrow. Okay, we got to touch on one of the game-changing moments of this Madrid derby, and that is the penalty. And it was controversial, but wouldn't be a big game without some controversy.
Like the beef that I've had with like some of those calls that we talked about. As an Arsenal fan, you know, I feel like VAR should have been called in a couple of times to overturn bad calls. And in England, it seems like they never want to go to VAR. They use that threshold of clear and obvious as almost like, it's not clear and obvious, let's just play on, because they don't want to go to VAR. This one, if that play continues, does anybody out there say that needs to go to VAR, that should have been reviewed? I don't think we were all sitting around watching it going, they're going to review that?
Well, and Christina Uncle even said, like, they kind of waved off. The whole thing, the way it happened, was just strange.
It's the referee's decision.
Yeah.
The way they set this system up is the man that made the call originally goes over to look at the monitor. They don't have VAR make the decision. VAR makes the recommendation. Then you as a ref go look at it. But you have to have the gumption as a referee to stand by your own call when somebody else is telling you maybe you're wrong.
But don't you feel like refs now more than ever are second guessing because of the safety net of VAR?
Look, the second guessing comes from the environment that Real Madrid create. This is a big match, irregardless, and there's going to be pressure. But when your club and when your TV channels create the sense of victimhood around it, there's many referees. I don't care if you're the best referee in the world, they're going to succumb. This was a bad mistake. But at the end of the day, this is a reflection not just on the referee, but the VAR system. 1 week, it's clear and obvious. The next week, it's common sense. The next week, it's letter of the law. How many times have we heard that? By the letter of the law, there is a little bit of contact. VAR is becoming a problem. There are things that it needs to be simple. I think offside, it's something that can be used for it, but the gray area that still exists in VAR, that is a contributing factor to moments like this. There's still gray area in this conversation.
There always will be, by the way.
It needs work.